afternoon again, and welcome to our distinguished panelists who have joined us from practically across the country. Two from Bangalore, one from Mohali, one from Delhi, and of course Madan in Hyderabad. This is the first session after the inaugural session that we just had, and the topic for this session that Dean Pilutla will moderate this afternoon is the future of education, transformation, and disruptions. While I introduced everyone or mentioned everyone very briefly earlier, I also want to just again formally welcome Professor Sudhir Krishnaswamy, Vice Chancellor of NLSIU Bangalore, Professor Rishikesh Krishnan, Director of IIM Bangalore, Professor Niharika Vora, Vice Chancellor of Delhi Skills and Entrepreneurship University, Delhi, and Professor Rudra Pratap, Vice Chancellor of Plaksha University in Mohali. Dean Pilutla, over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for joining us. I think we're going to have an interesting conversations amongst ourselves. So the way that Guru had suggested to me, which seemed the right thing to do, is to give you about 4 or 5 minutes for you to lay out your own thoughts on the topic of the challenges and opportunities to broaden the reach and scope of education in India. So that's the topic that we wanted to discuss. So if you can take about 4 or 5 minutes and you just outline your thoughts, then we can pick up, and then I can set the stage and try to moderate a conversation amongst you. We didn't have a set order, that wasn't what we had started off with. So unless I have a volunteer, someone who puts up their hand and says, I'll go first, would you be okay with me just picking one of the 4 of you and then setting off? Is that okay? So Professor Vora, you raised your cup. I'm taking that as a sign that you raised your hand to go first. So if you can start off. Just as again to introduce Professor Niharika Vora is the Vice Chancellor of Delhi Skill and Entrepreneurship University. Thank you so very much. Please, Dr. Vora, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Madan Pitula, and thank you for all of I'm very happy to be able to speak about some of my own work that I've done over the last 1 year in setting up this university. So when I was given the opportunity to head this new initiative, I thought I was going to, just set up something to the scale of IIM Ahmedabad, which is 400 students every year. And when we have 1,000 students on campus, we all complain that we are too crowded. And but when I got to Delhi, very quickly the landscape was that there are about 1.5 lakh students every year in Delhi who pass class 12, and only there are seats for about 30,000 of them in Delhi, and there are about 6 lakh students who are enrolled in the School of Open Learning in the Delhi University. And the School of Open Learning in Delhi University is a small dilapidated building which is known for its environment, where a lot of the kunjis are sold. There is no teaching, there's nothing, and there are 6 lakh people who are trying to get a degree. And they're trying to get a degree because degree is aspirational in India, and there are very few places which actually are able to give degrees in India. The second problem so one was scale. The second thing was, when I was starting to talk to industry, the industry often said that we have huge demands in, let us say, facilities managers. We don't have facility managers. And if you were to produce some, we will take them. Or banking. Banks, Quest itself hires more than 3,000 people for the banking industry every month. And yet there are a lot of BComs who finish their BCom from wherever they finish and spend 2 years trying to prepare for getting into a bank, and then many of them are not really able to get into the bank. And I can go on the list. What became very clear to me is that, in the rush for everyone trying to get a degree, and that to an engineering degree, we had really not looked at how can we make our other courses a lot more skill oriented. Like, can the student who is studying a BA history actually learn something that will give them a job right out of college, and not just I have a BA history or a BA English and so on and so forth. So in the last 1 year, we have been very carefully having conversations with the industry as to where there are gaps, and then creating programs for such for the gaps that exist. And to create these programs, we have made a principle that we would have 50% people represented from the industry and 50% from academics. Now that itself is pretty much unheard of, because it is either academics don't really like the way industry talks, and industry of course does not like the way academics talk, and just to have them to meet for 8 times to come up with a curriculum is a challenge. But I think it's a challenge worth taking, because when you do take it and you do end up persisting and making sure that you do, we did come up with some interesting curriculum for at least 10 new bachelor's degrees. And all of these bachelor's degrees are oriented towards the market. So whether it is medical lab technology, or it is data analytics, or it is banking, or it is BPM, it doesn't matter. We've created a job-oriented degree. Now the next challenge, now that we have launched, we've got admissions and all of that, I think the next challenge for us is how do we keep the momentum of the industry continuing to talk to our students. And again, I think coming from a very traditional educational academic background, I often have the tendency to think you must know this. How can you not know this? How can you not have to do this? How can you not know this much economics or accounting and strategy or whatever that we think is basic to a subject? And the industry very blatantly says, look, I don't care if they know this or not, but I need them to know what is a KYC and how to fill it, and how to make sure that the KYC gets filed at the right time in the right place. Now that seems not rocket science, but if you look at how the industry is built, you definitely need to do this. So my next challenge in the last 2 months is actually to get the industry to be as involved in the transaction of the curriculum as it was in the designing of the curriculum. And any one of you who have done this over years would know these are not easy challenges. And the reason I'm sharing this is that, you know, what has been interesting for us is that most of our students that have taken admission are actually from the middle to the lower end of the society. So most people, when I talk about my courses, they say, oh, this is very great. My maid's son will be very interested in it. Or my XYZ will be my rickshaw driver. And at some point I used to get very hurt. What do you mean only your maid's son would be interested? But I've made peace with it, and I'm okay. Because from the conversations I'm having with some of these students, it's actually changing their lives. It's actually about, I didn't think I could do a BBA in retail. I could go and work half the time during my entire BBA in a Starbucks or a Hamleys, right? So we've been able to create some of these internships, real life opportunities for the students to learn. Now, of course, we are still, you know, we're infants. We still have to see 3 years later how this all pans out. But my first steps is, as an educator, how do I ensure that there is a certain level of depth and real learning of the skill, which is again not something we are used to. As a faculty, I'm used to giving you a concept, you got the concept, that's good enough for me. But in the skill-based education, you might get the concept, but you also need to know how to do what you need to do without and error, which takes practice, which takes attention to detail, which takes the faculty to give that kind of space and time to the student to practice and to actually do it. So if we want to scale this, and I think it's worth scaling, we need to see how do we do more of vocational pedagogy. How do we make sure that the poorest of the poor student does have access to the tools that are required? So for example, we have a digital media and design course. Students are very excited about it, but you need an 80,000 laptop to be able to be attending this course. And most of these students who are coming from these homes don't have the capacity to buy an 80,000 rupee laptop. The government, of course, is willing to spend, and that comes to my third point, that I think if we really want good quality access to higher education, the government will need to spend more money. I don't think the private will be able to do it, because there is a parallel university which does some of this, and their fees is easily 3 lakh rupees per year. My students can't pay that, and I would not want to have it at that level, because I think it's important that the students of the class and the socioeconomic status we are looking at have a real chance to create a livelihood. So I'll stop here. I don't know if this is what you wanted to hear, but this is what I've been with in the last 1 year and been working with.
Thank you. This is absolutely what we wanted to hear, Professor Vora. This is a really good example of taking the challenges, converting them into opportunities, but then again coming up, and looking at, there are now further challenges that you're talking about. A couple of them you mentioned already, but we'll pick them up in conversation. So if we can quickly, so I do know that that Rishi, you have a very tight deadline. You need to leave at 5:25. So I'm, with the permission of the other two panelists, I'm going to pick on you to go next. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you, Madan. Good afternoon to all of you. First, let me say that I'm really happy that Niharika went first, because I am on her academic council at DSCU, and I can completely endorse that whatever she says is 100% true. Recently we had the academic council meeting where we heard the details of all these outlines, and it's really fascinating to see how they've tried to link academic and skill-based pedagogy together. So all power to you, Niharika, and all the best to DSCU. So one of the people I used to keep bumping into on flights in the days when we used to fly around a lot was Mr. Mohandas Pai. And every time I would meet him, and this is over the last 20 years, every time I would meet him on a flight, he would, of course, he would have his cheery welcome, but then he would follow that up by saying, you guys in the IIM sitting on a 100-acre campus, educating some 200 students per year, what are you guys doing in a country of, this size and this complexity? So, that's something which used to ring in my ears, but, I don't think we did too much about it. When I became director of IMB about 1.5 years ago, incidentally, it's exactly 1.5 years today, I found that I'm now in a role where my current chairman, Dr. Devi Shetty, is also a person who's very much on scale and affordability and accessibility. So once again, I'm confronting the same issues that Mohandas Pai used to keep raising with me every time I would meet him. So let me just share, sort of articulate for you, what is the kind of challenge we face in an institute like IIM when we look at some of these issues. Now, if you look at the challenges for the institute, on the one hand, we are trying to become, globally better ranked. We are trying, to get into we're already in the top 50. We now want to get into the top 20. We are trying to see how we can push our research agenda so that we have more and more publications in those top journals. Faculty want more and more time to focus on their research. So that's the sort of institutional agenda that we are struggling with in our traditional business, which is the high end of management education. And then at the same time, we are also, of course, struck by all the challenges of the country in terms of scale and accessibility that Niharika has just explained so well to all of us. So how do we address these? Well, I think there are a few ways we've been trying to address it, and only the next few years will tell whether we can ride both these horses at the same time. One way we have been trying to address this is essentially through the route of MOOCs. So in 2014, IIM Bangalore signed up with edX, one of the popular MOOCs platforms. And in the last 7 or 8 years, we've been able to produce 50 plus courses. According to the enrollment statistics, about 2 million people signed up. Obviously, completion rates are much smaller than that. So the numbers completed would probably be in thousands, not in millions. But we've certainly managed to reach out to participants across something like 190 countries. But what is more encouraging to me is the fact that this last year, we developed an entrepreneurship course. Actually, it's a modified version of the same entrepreneurship course we developed earlier for edX, which we offered to women entrepreneurs across the country with the support of the National Commission for Women. And I don't know the exact number, but I think approximately 6,000 women signed up for that course, and more than 2,000 actually completed it. And we were able to reach this large number because we also did a Hindi voiceover of the original English content so that we could make the MOOCs accessible and available to a much larger audience. So this has just given us a hint that yes, there are new opportunities. Perhaps we can use technology to reach out to a much larger audience. So what are we planning to do with this insight? Well, what we are planning to do is 2 or 3 things. One is we have identified 3 sectors where we think there's a huge need for high quality management education at low cost. One is hospitals and healthcare, and that's been exposed by the COVID pandemic. The second is the MSME sector, which is a huge driver of employment, but is struggling with multiple challenges at this point of time. And the third is the government and public policy, which clearly the government is super important in many respects. And there's a real crying need to raise the capability levels in the government. So what we are hoping to do over the next few years is to use this capability we have created on MOOCs to offer customized certificate and diploma programs to these 3 sectors with a focus on working professionals. So unlike Niharika, whose focus is more on youngsters who are at the entry level, we are going to focus on people who've already been working in these domains for several years and helping them upgrade their skills so that they can make even more significant contributions to the economy. The other big initiative we are planning is inspired by IIT Madras. IIT Madras, a couple of years ago, announced, and they have now started a bachelor's in data analytics, which is completely online. They got about 10,000 students enrolling for the first offering of this program. I don't know their retention rate, but I understand it's not too bad. So inspired by this, we hope to offer a bachelor's program online, which will combine digital technology and entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship need is well known. I think people are also very interested in digital technology. The valuation of all these startups and all the unicorns has shown to us how important this sector is. So we want to create an alternate undergraduate stream for students across the country who want to become entrepreneurs. And they might be doing another program. For example, they might already be registered in one of Niharika's courses, or they might be doing something in a local college. We are quite happy if they are doing that as well, but they'll also have the opportunity to register for our online bachelors. And we are going to do it in the current philosophy of stackability. So we'll have a certificate, we'll have a diploma, and then we'll have a degree. And at each of these levels, you will be able to take away some qualifications, which will enable you to get a useful job or be an entrepreneur, as the case may be. So just to close my opening remarks, the challenge is how do we make all this happen in the same institute? This is going to be a bit of a struggle. We have just about 100 faculty at the present point of time. The faculty are quite fully stretched. We have a challenge even in running the MOOCs because the whole edtech sector is just buzzing now. So retaining talent in a sort of semi-government kind of a setup and paying people enough so that we can retain them is a big challenge. And of course, at some point of time, a lot of these cultures are going to come into conflict with each other. a 10,000 student entrepreneurship program versus a 500 student MBA program. We have to see how we reconcile some of the issues which will come up. But I think this is the fun of being in India. You have opportunities to do all these things. And I am hopeful. Let's see how all of these things go in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishi. Thank you very much. We'll move on to. So again, I'm just going to pick here Professor Pratap. You want to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Madan. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. Of course, I have been with some of these panelists before in different forums. Regarding transformations and disruptions, that's basically what our university is all about, but centered around tech education. The whole idea of Plaksha University is to reimagine tech education. So when we talk about reimagining tech education, what does that mean? The underlying aspiration, this is, by the way, this is the university is founded by, 80 plus founders. It's a collective philanthropy model of setting up a private university, which is very, very appealing to me. It's something which is very new to India. It actually reminds you of olden days, much older, going to the days of Nalanda and all, how those universities were supported. And our aspiration is to be the Takshashila of those times, in modern times for tech. Anyway, I think that there are a couple of things. I'm just going to touch on 5 things that I think are important for transformation and disruptions. This is what the panel is about. First one is need to shift the foundation to digital base, foundation of technical education, or for matter, almost all education. But in technical education, we certainly need to shift the base or the foundational training to digital base. What do we mean by digital base? It's not just about computer literacy. That's for everybody. But computing literacy is what I would talk about when I talk about technical education, computing literacy. Mathematics that you do on computers, not just by hand, and that gives you a completely different scale of doing mathematics. Machine learning and AI. Rishi and I have had debates about this before, whether machine learning and AI is as foundational today as linear algebra and differential equations used to be in the past, and they still are foundational. And large data visualization, which is, data is pouring from everywhere. Data is pouring like mad, if you will. So visualization of data, this is what foundational shift has to be for technical education. And it doesn't matter which branch you choose, these things are important for you today. So based on that, we have also crafted completely new majors. Our majors are not mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering. Not that those fields are not important, but in 21st century, all of that is going to merge into cyber physical systems, for example. So we have AI and we have robotics and cyber physical systems. We have CS and AI. We have biosystems engineering. So there are going to be completely different, majors, different fields of study, which are interdisciplinary, for the future. And research is going to be all centered around grand challenges. You heard, Dr. Rajiv Kumar tell us that, hey, focus on your problems, right? And that's why it has to be that way. We need to, I also appeal to all educators to, parse our courses and weave out or sieve out information content from the courses. Information is now readily available on your fingertips, But all our structure, course structure so far has been very information centric, as if you need to pass on that information. You know, the whole idea of writing on the board and students taking notes is all centered around that. You don't need that, you know. So we can completely change education around this and get rid of whatever information that you can readily get, you can get from, you know, from the net or wherever. We have to teach students how to get the right information. Then there is this delocalization of resources. You know, what we have seen in pandemic times is students are at home. We are talking about online courses. How do you delocalize resources so that they have access to whatever resources they need, particularly in technical education, right? You need labs. You need labs. This is a great opportunity to focus on what can you do with locally available materials, what can you do with locally available tools, you know, and not just focus on the shiny labs that, you know, your top institutions have to provide. Plus, also, all these institutions to sort of come together, join hands and say, hey, you know, if you have students in this area, my laboratory here is available to your students as well. If they want to do certain things, they might as well come here and do it. Can we do this churn and join hands and, you know, throw our resources collectively to this huge collection of students who can benefit from it? Scale up with quality. This is you know, obviously the $1 million question that all of us are struggling with. Here, I would say that not everybody should try to do everything. You know, Gaussian distribution is a very powerful thing. You know, it holds true in society in most things, and we should not try to make it flat. It doesn't work. You know, if you are centered, or if you're focused on excellence, focus there and see how much can you put in there in that excellence bucket. Not lower your standards to cater to 1 million students. That's not required. Yes, we do need to train so many people, but, you know, not by diluting quality. So that's one. And closer feedback mechanism with closer feed forward mechanism with industry. We need that much closer feed forward mechanism with industry. Dr. Rajiv Kumar mentioned that. Madan, you responded to that yes, we can, you know, work with industry as well as, you know, second tier institutions. This is very important that we work much more closely. And now technology exists so that we can do it much faster turnaround time. You know, we are here sitting here from all cities, you know, talking about things. It's now possible. We don't have to fret over it. We can have, you know, 20 industry captains from various parts of the country give us what they think is required as skills for the future, and we can incorporate that feed forward, as I said, in our you know, courses or in our skill sets that we want to impart to students. If somebody needs, you know, 10,000, some industry needs 10,000 data scientists, we can produce them. You know, it's not hard, but data scientists of what kind, with what kind of focus, you know? So it's not so hard to structure this, provided you have those pinpointed, you know, requirements coming in time for us to take into our structures. So that's, you know, that's all I will say, Madan, at this point. And I'll say that, you know, we have our task cut out, but I think we are also cut out for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sudhir?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madan, for the invitation to participate in this panel. We've had excellent contributions by the panelists so far, and I'll take a slightly different route. I won't talk so much about the National Law School or what we're trying to do, and let me just try and cast a broader conceptual framework on what we may have learned in this kind of age of the continuous pandemic. All of us are waiting for some signs that this might end. But we trust that 22 might be it, but let's hope so. I want to start with the radical thinker on education, Ivan Illich. in his 1970 manifesto, Deschooling Society, he argued that we must disestablish school. And it's kind of like a catchy slogan like defund the police. Said that we must disestablish school because we've got to get out of a modernized misery. He was very concerned about dehumanizing modernity, the hegemonies of state and market, and so on and so forth, and said, let's get rid of school. And he meant school as a system. It's not surprising that a proposal like this was thought too radical and unimplementable in that period. And frankly, over the period between Ivan Illich's manifesto and today, the compulsory school movement have grown all over the world, in India and elsewhere. Much less attention, though, was paid to Illich's proposal of what is the alternative to schools? What is that educational alternative to schools? And this, you need to get much further in the book. And in chapter 6, he has a proposal that he calls learning webs. And remember, this was written in 1970. And he promised that this would produce an epimethian man. And I'm going to say nothing about epimethian men or humans. And I'll try and say a little bit about learning webs. He imagines that a normatively ideal system, educational system, must satisfy a few criteria. First, all those who want to learn have access to the available resources at any time in their lives. I suppose Professor Niharika's work speaks to this most directly. All those who want to share, that is, all those who want to teach or educate, must be networked so that they can provide what they can to those who want to learn. And the third normative proposition he advances is that anyone who has an unsolved inquiry should be able to present this inquiry to the public, just general inquiries. Anyone can solve it. Some kind of public domain challenges as the way in which research and ideas will grow. And he sketched out in greater detail what such an opportunity web or network, and those are his words, I'm not making it up. He actually said opportunity web, and he actually said the network. That disintermediated this relationship between learners and teachers, and that was his primary kind of focus. And he identified 4 ingredients of this network. And I want to name these, and I'll be brief because I think there's something that we need to pay attention to here. He said the first thing you need to have is we need to have reference services to educational objects, meaning texts, images, physical objects that people can learn from. We need to have skill exchanges where novices and experts can come together, find each other. We need to have peer matching so that communities, partners in inquiry could form. And fourth, he suggested that we need to have directories of educators so that we record educational contributions, because ultimately those who teach provide great value to society, and we must record these contributions. I think by this point, I trust that all of us are able to recognize that these proposals were not the ravings of an irreconcilable idealist of some sort, but of a prescient futurist who anticipated with some clarity and detail the future of higher education, especially one that's shaped by the internet and a networked society. So at NLS, the last 2 COVID pandemic inflected years have taught us a lot of things, but let me just identify a few of them that we think are like key vectors in higher education. And they resemble so much Illich is a model of the learning webs that I think holding that normative frame is useful. Other panelists have also remarked on some of these, so I'm going to be very, very brief. The first is the ubiquity of digital content. Now, there are enough lectures on just about any topic, provided that you have access to this network, right? So the pervasiveness and availability of the network is the key. If you have a strong network, the content is available. The remarkable and gradual and then rapid erosion between physical and online learning is something that all of us are seeing happen before us as educators in the universities. Coming with that is the instability of the university certification. I want to say instability. I don't want to say that our certification models are of a bygone era, but I would say that there's already, we can see instability. Private players provide certification, and that entire certification process is in some flux. And finally, the primacy of user authentication of a learning experience. It's not enough for us to use our own vetting mechanisms to decide who teaches, but users seem to want to have a word in almost in real time. And that seems to shape the way learning experience works. Now, I suppose that this has been said many times before, but I hope it's not an overstatement to say that we are in a sort of disruptive moment in higher education in the third decade of the 21st century. But I suppose that Illich offers us something of a normative and very imaginative radical framework to frame some of these transitions that all of us are negotiating. And I'll stop there. Back to you, Madan.
Thank you, Sudhir. It's fantastic, actually. It provides a very nice framework for us to discuss. From this incredibly, conceptual place that you brought us to, Sudhir, let me ask a very practical question to the other panelists and to you, because I know that there is a lot of innovation that you're doing in the curriculum and the pedagogy at the National Law School, right? So you're doing that. So I would put out a question to the panelists. We'll begin with this. Given the kind of the curriculum that you're developing, given the courses that you're developing, which are all unique, which are all fantastic, what do you see as the role? What do you see as the role of other institutions, that are out there? Would you be willing to share this curriculum with them? Would you be willing to build a network of other providers of education in the same space as yours? If so, what do you see as potential barriers that are out there? But how do you go about building that? If that is the motivation that you have, you want to do that, how would you build that? Because the courses, so Professor Vora, the courses that you're talking about, fantastic, really, really good. There are lots and lots of colleges that I can imagine in all kinds of, in tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities, in tier 3 towns that would love to have this curriculum, so that's there. So would you do it? And if so, what do you see as impediments to So we'll start with you, Professor Vora.
Sorry, I kind of missed you. Are you saying, would you share the curriculum? Is that what I didn't get your question? Of course, this is not, this isn't copyright. It has to be copyleft. And the success of something like this has to be when others start using it and the industry and the students get benefited by it. Happy to, I think only when we share, we also grow. And if I go by, what Professor Sudhir was saying on the network, I think that's another thing. To be able to really create networks, you have to give. You have to care and you have to give. And so I completely would say happy to share.
Thank you. So Rishi, I just want to put you, so how do we build this kind of a platform for sharing, Rishi? So what is it that we need to do so that we as institutions, we come together, we provide that? I know that you already do some of that online, right? So you have been you've been picked by the government for, there is a particular, so a lot of management education online. You have Swayam, I believe, is the name of the online platform that you've created. So your experiences of building that platform, your experiences of getting others also to share their material on that. So could you tell us something about that experience and how that will enable us to do what Sudhir has set out as building this network that we're talking about?
Yeah, so, Swayam, of course, has been around for some time. So we are the national coordinator for management, which essentially means we are the kind of gatekeeper of courses on management on the Swayam platform. At the moment, I think it's not too difficult because we do have several institutions which would like to place their courses on Swayam. And I think we just have to do a little bit of curation, and that's about all that we really have to do to get those courses onto the platform. I would, however, make a slightly more general comment. I think in India, there is challenges in collaboration. There are challenges in institutions working together. For example, a few of us IIMs have been supposedly, working with each other on doctoral program for many years now, but hardly any courses are really offered across the institutes, maybe one or two, but those are really exceptions rather than the rule. Sudhir and I have been discussing collaboration for the last year and a half, Sudhir, quite some time. But we've had lots of nice chats, but we've not really got down to the hard task of really collaborating on the ground. We had a collaborative program with the Indian Institute of Science more than a decade ago, but even that, I must confess, is not very active. So I think in general, collaboration seems to be an issue. I think we are still sort of obsessed with our own content, our own differentiation. We still think that we are, which we must do that as well, but not to the extent that we cut off everybody else. So I think there's a real big shift that is required there. And I'm afraid, Madan, I don't really have a very simple answer to that. The good news is we are all talking to each other and there's a lot of active intent at least. But how we're going to convert that intent into reality is something which really remains to be seen. Digital platforms do offer that opportunity. But once again, I think a lot of, if I can just conclude, I think a lot of the problem is with our internal mechanisms. For example, faculty worried about their workload, things like, some issues regarding perceived issues of quality, though they may not be really that serious. And all this stuff really comes in the way of making genuine collaboration happen.
Thank you. RP, you have something to add here? You have a new institution, so maybe you can create the culture of collaboration right at the start, but any observations you have about the creation of a platform so that we can share a lot of these different, the innovative ideas that are coming, the innovative designs that are coming from Plaksha, from the Skills University. So there are a lot of these innovative things that are there. So any ideas on that? You're muted, I think.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was muted. Madan, yes, thank you for asking that question. Actually, what I have brought to Plaksha is my experience from Indian Institute of Science, where we did an incredible experiment in terms of sharing, So there was a project on nanoscience and nanotechnology that we did together with IIT Bombay. Indian Institute of Science and IIT Bombay got together and we did a project together. In that project, Madan, there were 100 faculty members involved, 50 from IISc and 50 from IIT Bombay. That's the largest such project I've ever seen in the country. And this is back in 2005 that we had 100 crore funding, for this project. We established labs at both places, and we established sort of complementary facilities. And from there, we came out with this thing of sharing, not just with other researchers around us, but with the entire country. We have run a program where it's called Indian Nanoelectronics Users Program. 8,000 PhD students from the country, from leaving out Indian Institute of Science and IIT Bombay students, 8,000 other PhD students worked at these facilities hands-on and did their PhD thesis. That's the kind of impact it made. So we understood how to do this, how to do this sharing. We worked so hard on establishing those labs. It took us 18 months of planning, just planning, not execution, 18 months of planning to build this semiconductor, fab, research fab at the place. And we shared that design with 5 other institutions so that we could set up, not as big, but smaller clean rooms in different institutions. we did that. I'm doing that even now with a local organization here, a CSIR lab. So buoyed by that experience and what kind of culture it can create, I'm certainly trying, Madan, to rope in 16 institutions around Mohali and build a network. I'm a strong believer in local, just do things first local. So build 16 institutions, you are part of that. Let's all come together and let's look at what kind of complementary facilities we can build. If Punjab Engineering College has some tools and ISER has some tools already, why, and these tools, some of these tools cost 2 crores, 3 crores. Why should I again put the same tool in my college? It doesn't make any sense in my university. I should put something which they also need, I also need, you also need, and none of us are able to afford, right now, individually. So I think that this is the model that we need to embark on, and we need to, Rishi pointed out a very important thing, that we are still caught up in having our distinctions, and that just separates us. You want to, me, I, this institute, that kind of thing is still going on. And that's what stops you from this kind of very open collaboration. So, just as an example, in 30 seconds, I'll tell you this, that when I was at Indian Institute of Science, at that Center for Nanoscience and Engineering, I was the founding chair. I made it a rule that all these 8,000 students or whatever 1,000 students come to do their work at our institute, or scientists from all research labs who come to do the work at our center, in none of their papers, any faculty member will ever be a joint author. I just made it a rule, and my colleagues all follow that till today. What that does is it just cuts out all conflict of interest, and it has worked beautifully. Now the younger folks who join there, they have no such expectation that they're going to, just because they helped some student from another university, they will become no. I said, even if you help, don't. Just keep it absolutely clean. So we can do such kinds of things, and it is being done in the country. There is no reason we can't do it. We just need to rise a little bit above that noise of ego.
Thank you, Arpi. Sudeep, you set the cat among the pigeons here, right? So you're the one who kicked off this notion of creating this network. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, let me suggest what we have tried and what appears to have worked, and what I am a little hesitant and less sure about. I think that if we start at the end of research collaboration of the sort that Professor Rudra Pratap spoke about, I think there are many takers among the faculty, especially if the state or universities put significant resources behind these collaborative research programs. There are a lot of hands that go up. The economics and the reputational side of teaching collaborations is a lot more complicated. Ultimately, universities distinguish themselves as providers of higher education. All of us do. And if we have any point of distinction, it must be that we curate well. So our curriculum is very good, or that we deliver it very well. Our pedagogy is very good. There's something about that affective human experience of teaching and learning that we do extremely well. So my question is that if we don't, we all know that we average out on the human experience, which is that some teachers are very good, some teachers are not so good, even at the best institutions around the world. But we put a lot of stake in our curatorial function, that our curriculums are extremely strong. Now, if we go down the path of saying that we just make it open courseware, anybody can teach the curriculum, I think that that's easy to say, tough to do, tough to implement. I don't see many good examples of this anywhere in the world, frankly. There are a few small examples, but the incentive structure for those large universities to engage in open courseware are completely different from what we might be faced with. So I sense that the last thing, and I'll say this, is that when we talk about universities collaborating, we have good ongoing conversations with both in IIM Bangalore and IISc, and we still think we're going to pull something off on both fronts. So I'm not cynical. I'm quite optimistic about that, but I don't know that the first port of call is teaching and teaching collaboration. This whole, I can barely get cross-listing going across my academic programs within the same university. And with all the complexities of credit structures and prerequisites and all the other, micro politics of departments. So this idea that we live in this friction-free transfer of course credits, transfer of program qualifications across universities. I've been, and I'll just say this, the UGC or some wing of the government has notified an academic bank of credits to which all of us are supposed to bank our systems. I'm just a little unsure that it's as simple as that. We might need to bring more careful deliberation to this element of collaboration on the teaching side. So all said, I think that this is the way it's going to go, very unitized delivery of various educational qualifications. That's the direction in which things are pushing out on. We are not there yet, is what I'd say in closing. On the teaching side, on the research side, I'm way more optimistic.
So, Professor Vora?
So I just want to add something. If we have to be agile, we can't hire all our faculty because some of our courses will become irrelevant after maybe 3 or 5 years. And one of the most difficult things about closing a program is what do you do with the faculty? Because there is already faculty that we've hired for this. And I really think that this is where some of the institutes of excellence, like the National Law University, like the technical universities, IITs, IIMs, can really play a part because they do have specialized faculty who they've hired for whatever reasons, and they could really be part of the teaching of some of these courses that we have. So just to give you an example, for our bachelor's in the banking finance course, we actually have somebody from NLU Delhi who's teaching the banking laws and contract. And it really works because I don't have to hire a specialized faculty for that. They are really the experts on it. And it really makes sense for me to have them teach 2 credits, 3 credits, whatever it will be. And I really think that we need to think about this as well. We continue to think that I need to hire all my faculty, and which means that we are also over-committing our resources and will never be able to be agile in our courses. So just to stop, I mean, I was trying to find a world skill trainer for mobile app development. IIT Delhi does not have, IIT Bombay does not have, Stanford has a course on mobile app development. We don't have, right? No school in India actually has a BTech in mobile app development. Obviously, Stanford will close it once this is off, and they will run it when it is on. And all I'm saying is that if we continue to think that we need to hire all our faculty, we are actually not ever going to be able to be agile in what we offer to the students.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Vora. Guru has just informed me that we don't have any time for audience questions. I've monopolized your time. I'm sorry. You would have had a bunch of more interesting questions from the audience. But we leave with so we leave with the sober note that Sudhir has just struck, where he said that he doesn't see any examples anywhere in the world of the kind of collaboration that we're talking about on building a platform in and around teaching. So I take that, Sudhir. I take that. But what Professor Vora has said is that if you can think of complementarity, right? So if you're thinking, we're not thinking about like, competing institutions getting together and offering something similar, but complementarity, maybe that's where we begin these collaborations with. So I go and I look, if I'm a business school, I collaborate with a technical university, with a law school, and so on, to get the requisite kind of like the competence that is out there, but also for us to collaborate with one another in putting some courses on a platform, some courses, not all of it, but some courses on a platform, because as Sudhir has just pointed out, that tends to be, so ultimately that tends to be, it might be utopian for us to think that this is going to be freeware that we can offer to anybody for them to just come and take, because that seems to be what is distinct about each one of our institutions. The curriculum that you designed, and as curators, as you pointed out, that is what our competence has been over the years that's there. I'll stop at this. I don't want to take up more of your time. I did want to pick up on one, and I will speak to RP separately, because he put this out as some kind of a tension which I didn't see. So the tension between our desire for excellence versus our desire for reaching out to a lot of people. I'm sure that that's not exactly the way you phrased it, but that's the way I understood it, RP. But I'm going to put that out where you said that sometimes our desire for access, our desire to give everyone access to it, should not come at the expense of like chasing down that that excellence which might come with our focus on maybe a few students on the extreme right tail of the distribution. So that's something which you said there is some kind of a tension there. No time on this particular platform to talk about it, but a great thought that I'll pick your brains at a later stage.
Sure.
We'll stop here. Thank you so very much for accepting our invitation to come here. And we'll pick up some of these conversations. I mean, you've talked to one another. I haven't talked that much to all of you, but I'll pick up these conversations as we're going forward. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Madan. I want to thank all the panelists, and also thank Rishi, who had to sort of leave a couple of minutes ago. It's been a wonderful conversation. To all our audience who've stayed here, we've got nearly 200 people here on live session, sort of attending this event. I want to thank you for your participation this afternoon, but also a quick reminder that the next sort of day 2, if I can say so, is on Jan 27th, exactly a week from now. We have 4 sessions. We have Professor Krishnamurthy Subramanian, our finance faculty at ISB and the former chief economic advisor of India, talking on Indianizing Indian thought. We have a panel on skills for the post-pandemic world. We have a panel on what does it take to get startups to come from campuses more than what we currently have or what we desire. And the last is a closing keynote by Dr. Vinay Sahasrabudhe, who's the Member of Parliament, President ICCR, and Chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Education. On that note, again, thank you to all our panelists and to you, Madan, for your time and for moderating this session. And wish you all a good evening, and see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.